Welcome to The Investor, a podcast where I, Joel Palafinkel, your host, dives deep into the minds of the world's most influential institutional investors. In each episode, we sit down with an investor to hear about their journeys and how global markets are driving capital allocation. So join us on this journey as we explore these insights. All right, so really excited for my guest today. We have Donna Letier. I'm going to give a quick intro, and then we're going to go really deep on entrepreneurship, building a business, interacting with institutional investors. But Donna Letier is the founder and CEO of Gardenuity, which is a purpose-driven company redefining how individuals and organizations engage with gardening. This launched in 2017, and Gardenuity was built to make gardening accessible, intentional, and relevant to modern lifestyles, transforming it into a tool for wellness, mental health, and human connection. To date, Gardenuity has supported more than 5 million harvests across 500 companies nationwide, demonstrating both strong adoption and scalable impact. The company is backed by strategic investors, including Scott's Miracle-Gro, the Hunt family, the owners of the Kansas City Chiefs, and John Ledecky, the owner of the New York Islanders. So it's interesting to kind of work with people that kind of have an athletic and sports background. So I think there's some interesting, things to learn about that. But, why don't we start from the beginning, Donna? Tell me a little more about, you, who you are, your early education, your first career experiences, and how that shaped the way that you think about brands, purpose, and ultimately entrepreneurship, and then maybe lead into your origin story.
Well, Joel, first, thank you for having me. And let me kind of correct one comment. Scott's Miracle-Gro, I'm a huge fan of, love everything about their leadership and everything about what they're doing for the industry. They are not an investor in Gardenuity, but we do partner with them.
Sure, great.
And Bonnie Plains is one of our investors. So excited to be here today. I always love sharing kind of the story of how we've grown, and if it can impact somebody else and give them a little bit of confidence to step out on their own, then that's great. You asked about my background, and my background really has been in retail. I've been very fortunate to have some incredible mentors throughout my career. And we really, when Julie and I started Gardenuity, we looked at the intersection between wellness, horticultural science, and the home and garden, lawn and garden category. And we thought, how can we update it for the way we live today? And I think when I think about my background, I think really good brands aren't just selling a product, they're actually selling a story and a lifestyle opportunity, and one that will make an impact on the end user's life, which I think helps build trust over time.
Sure. That's amazing. So, when you kind of started building this, you built a strong foundation and brand strategy. What moments or insights from that chapter made you realize that you wanted to build something of your own? Tell me a little more about the origin story and, maybe the first version of Gardenuity and how it's evolved to where it is now.
Okay, Joel, there's actually been a lot of versions.
Okay.
As any entrepreneur, I think will tell you, you go in with one idea, and if you don't let the data help you create the narrative, then you're not really doing what you need to do as an entrepreneur, because the data is full of story points. When we started the company, it was the idea of evolving and architecting a really important category. And I think that that's been something Julie and I have focused on. It's taking a category that was really transactional into helping it build relationships with the end consumers. And well-being has been a natural foundation from the very beginning. We knew we wanted to make it accessible to everybody. Everybody has always talked globally about the wellness benefits that come from gardening, but the act of gardening was not really relationship based. And so we are that invitation to try to build confidence. And I think that it's an exciting opportunity. We get to update a really strong category that has truly some of the nicest people you'll ever meet, but it was time to update it. And I think that we've really built some measurable engagement through each season of Gardenuity. So where we thought we were going to really drive revenue growth in one category, we read the data and recognized that there's opportunities for revenue through other categories that we hadn't even considered.
Sure. So walk me through kind of the first pathway to revenue and then kind of some things that you learned from the data in terms of like other pillars and other ways to monetize.
Sure. Any entrepreneur, I think, who doesn't admit that they've got a little bit of luck, we've been lucky.
Sure.
We've worked really hard, but we've been lucky too. So we got a call from a big insurance company, and this is before we were really doing any B2B. And they said their CEO has done a deep dive on loneliness and depression and anxiety in the workplace. They were really one of the forerunners in looking at whole human health.
Mm-hmm.
And they said one thing that kept coming up as a conduit for delivering mental well-being and nutritional well-being and holistic health was gardening.
Mm-hmm.
And so they asked if we would come meet with them, and 6 months later, after a whole bunch of presentations and meetings, they said, we want to share you with the companies that offer our insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so within, 30 to 45 day period, we had programs set up across the country. And in full disclosure, Joel, then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And they all canceled. And because nobody knew what was going on. Well, 30 days after they canceled, they came back and said, can we do it virtually?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really how our B2B virtual programming started. And to say that we weren't just at the right place at the right time, nobody could foresee exactly what was going to happen. But we were able to pivot from in-person programming
Mm-hmm.
to virtual programming. And now we have a hybrid of both, which I think is interesting. So our two clear verticals are
Mhm.
B2B and D2C, and both are meeting plan and growing year over year, which is great.
That's amazing. So with the B2B that's virtual, I guess are they, when I think about gardening and I think of mental health, I think of like the Zen garden, right? The sand kind of box and I think there's a whole piece to that, right? Just kind
And
of
here we've got a desktop sand garden with
There you
sand
go.
and stones and live plants.
So because I can think that there's a huge community aspect to this, like especially with a lot of these organizations, they have a whole initiative to plant a tree, right? And there could probably be community building around people going out and planting trees together. And, obviously it could be really therapeutic doing gardening. And my parents are hardcore into gardening, right? They've got mango tree. I mean, they do real cultivation. They have like actual fruit bearing trees that they've, cultivated in their backyard. So there's a cultural piece to that, right? Different cultures, they really are into gardening and obviously just having the fresh vegetables that they cook with in their backyard versus having to go to the grocery store. But I feel like from a team building standpoint, there's when you're thinking about just activities for employees to do, that seems like a really great community driven activity, right? People do that together. They plant a tree or they make seeds. And even my daughter from daycare, it was really interesting. She brought back a couple like little, seedlets and little mini plants that she put together. And I thought that was really interesting. So is that kind of the first angle, which was like, hey, let's do something as a community? And then when you deliver it digitally, do you send them like a little kind of kit and then they kind of do it together digitally?
Actually, you brought up some really good points. And I don't think companies invest just in good ideas. They invest in measurable engagement and retention.
Sure.
And so the virtual programs that we do,
Mhm.
we will send a full kit to whether it's to an office where they're all going to plant together or to people's homes.
Sure.
And we've done Zooms for as many as 611 people at one time where they all got a garden and we actually built it together, but we talked about the why. The kits make it successful and easy because the science behind it has been handled,
Sure.
but you have to engage to do it yourself. So
Mhm.
it's amazing when you're with your colleagues, your customers, or your peers, and whether you're together kind of digging in the dirt or you're virtually digging in the dirt, you've got your pets and partners and kids with you, conversations happen. And
Mhm.
they don't just end when the virtual workshop ends. The conversations kind of continue on. How's your garden growing? What are you doing with all your cilantro harvests? How are your tomatoes growing, or what's happening with your Zen garden, or those kind of conversations. And I think that it's uniquely powerful, especially now where burnout's high, mental health is something that the C-suite's talking about. And gardening is a way to bring those conversations up, and it's a tool to combat the challenges that companies are facing now.
That's really helpful. When you're thinking about building new relationships with customers, what's a piece of feedback that you would give to your fellow founder peers, and maybe in terms of like how you would share that strategy with investors as well?
You know what? I love strategy,
Hmm.
and I love data and where they intersect, because I think data will help define the strategy.
Yeah.
But you have to look at a lot of data to really figure out where that consumer inflection point is, and what problem you're solving. From a kind of peer-to-peer founder council, I would say the best tool you have is persistence.
Hmm.
I think that it's really easy to give up, but every day is a new opportunity to win. And I think it's also important to recognize that millions of little wins add up to something big, right? It's not that
Hmm.
one thing that happened that turned your business around. It's a whole bunch of little things. And
Hmm.
I think that for me, it's when customers say, oh my gosh, I harvested my first tomato. I've tried for years and it's never worked. Or I got to see, uh, you know, come in and slow down and let my desktop garden nurture me. And we hear those stories every single day.
Sure.
And those personal wins from consumers kind of keep us motivated. You bet they do. And we as a team have those personal stories. I mean, when I see my daughter, who's severely handicapped and in a wheelchair, roll her little wheelchair out and pick a tomato right off our patio with airplanes flying overhead, the joy she feels is real.
Hmm.
So that fuels me to continue doing what I'm doing. So our mission has been to make gardens and gardening experiences accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
It's that accessibility that plays into the architecture of what we're building.
What's like your best seller? Is it like, I mean, for me, I just think it'd be great to have fresh tomatoes or like, basil or mint and stuff. But I guess when you're working with corporates, what's kind of like the main go-to, plant that's like the best for like the employee profile and,
Well,
kind of.
we've got technology that actually matches the right plants to the right season to the right time of year. So, right
Interesting.
now in February, we've got a huge program for a global technology company, and they're doing the taco toppings garden.
Hmm.
Well, in some of the zip codes, it's still really chilly, so they're going to get leafy greens and
Yeah.
cold weather herbs. But for their employees who are in Phoenix and Austin, they're going to get early spring tomatoes. And for
Hmm.
those in Las Vegas, they might even get a pepper. So it all falls under the taco toppings umbrella. But
Yeah.
our AI technology matches plants to predictive weather and time to harvest, which at the end of the day is all about success. So it might be a group of 500 people online, but we might have 100 different combinations of plants.
So a lot of our audience is the investor community, so venture capitalists, private equity investors. institutions. And I just think it's really great to have, the founder side as well. But, what advice would you give to founders that are trying to, um, build a relationship with an investor, obviously position themselves in the most accurate way and compelling way? I think you already hit on some of these pieces with just having data. It's like, look, here's the metrics that we have. And then I think you need to solve a problem, right? So you don't want to present your opportunity and kind of the vision you have to a space investor, unless they want to cultivate, agriculture on space one day, which I don't think is too far off. I've seen it in some of the movies, and there's a whole technology with vertical farming as well. So maybe that two-part question, tell me a little bit about, the investor landscape and, advice to kind of really position yourself from a founder standpoint to really be relevant to the investors, and then maybe just some top-level trends in like the future of agriculture and gardening.
Um, oh, that's a whole bunch of questions that I love, actually.
Yeah.
The first one, from an investor standpoint, and you've got different levels, whether you're friends and family raised, just trying to get the door open, or you're at a seed stage or A level. Raj Shah, one of my investors, taught me from the very beginning that he invests in people. And that, I think, translates both for the investor and those who they're investing in. So you got to like the people. And we have walked away from some investors because, and this is not a technical term, but I told my husband they were icky.
Sure.
And he goes, enough said, because it really actually is a relationship that is going to be there for a long time. And they're going to be good quarters and they're going to be challenging quarters. And I think you need to look at the big picture, I happen to look at day-to-day sales because I'm a little crazy, but actually I need to stand back sometimes and look at the big picture. So when you're talking to investors, they're judging you, but you need to judge them. Pick people you like, people you can go to. I would rather, it's easier to have one big, huge check, right? But with that comes some pretty significant strings. Find a group of investors who you can turn to and say, I don't know how to navigate this, or here's an opportunity. How do I do it? Or what do you think? If all of a sudden you've got 10 investors who actually believe in you and your team, they're going to become ambassadors of your brand. And they're going to make introductions easily. They're going to walk you through how to do certain things you don't know how to do. And as a founder, that's probably been my best lesson, to be okay not knowing how to do something. I mean, there are things that I have to call out and say, I have no idea what you're talking about. Help. And that's okay. I mean, a good leader is comfortable asking for help. So to circle back specifically, be really picky about who you let invest. And they need to like you and you need to like them. I'm a big fan of good family offices. I think a good family office is a great resource, and they become true partners. And they're not looking at it just as numbers. And they know that the path is not going to be totally straight. They know that there's going to be pivots along the way. And there are really good family office communities in every city. And one introduction can introduce you to a lot of family offices.
Sure. And I think it's a two-way street, to your point, right? I mean, if an investor is being icky, I don't know what caused that, but obviously if incentives aren't aligned and maybe there's predatory behavior, or there's just straight up icky behavior, like you mentioned, it more gets around. It's a small community. What do investors need to be mindful of? Obviously, some investors are going to be more responsive than others, but what are some things? What's a piece of advice for investors to build good relationships with founders as they're developing their careers as investors and looking to kind of grow their portfolio?
Be available, and listen. without having the answer before you've heard the whole challenge. Some investors start talking before you've gotten the challenge out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so be a good listener, and know that it's going to take longer than anybody says it's going to take. And every single introduction matters, and a thoughtful introduction goes a really long way. So, from an investor standpoint, they're looking at people that they like, as Scott Letier with Decent Capital has said. He bets on the jockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we also are doing that, and so
Sure.
somebody that, if I were to, as I invest in companies, it needs to be a category or a product I actually like. Like, it would be hard for me to invest in something I just didn't like the
Mm-hmm.
category of. Invest in something that if you've got an 11 o'clock call because there's a challenge, you don't mind taking it. Like, I'm not probably going to be an investor in a funeral home, because I probably
Sure.
don't want to have that conversation at 2 a.m. But will
Mhm.
I invest in a new healthy probiotic drink? Maybe, because
Yeah.
it's something I'm interested in. Just think about who you don't mind having conversations with, good and bad, any time of day.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your website. I mean, you've got a lot of great products in inventory. What's kind of one of the most popular? I'm looking at like shop indoor, and then it looks like you can shop outdoor as well. What's kind of like one of your best sellers for the outdoor and the indoor?
It depends on the time of year. Like right now
That's
in
true.
Dallas, because we've had, below freezing temperatures,
Hmm.
nothing's going to match, right? So
Yeah,
if you come on and you say you want to do an herb garden, we're not going to send you live plants right now, because they're
sure.
not going to match. They won't
Hmm.
survive. Um, so in the spring, our outdoor gardens are probably the number one category. Desktop gardens and Zen gardens are doing very well. January is a big month for microgreens. People are trying to
Hmm.
get healthy. And then we've got giftables. So, giving something that grows and brings life and an opportunity to nurture and be nurtured is always a good gift idea. So we built the business, Joel, so it would be 12 months a year. A lot of
Sure.
gardening companies, they make their year between March and May.
Hmm.
We actually have an incredibly strong fourth quarter, and our first quarter is already off beating last year's numbers. So
Sure.
we've really built a 365-day-a-year business.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then it sounds like you've built some. I think you were mentioning earlier that you built some technology that kind of matches the type of product on the season, and then probably. I mean, I think it'd be interesting too if it's like based on the type of business, right? If you're a SaaS business, maybe you resonate better with like certain types of products versus like an e-commerce business. I don't know if it's that granular, but I think as you evolve like that matching algorithm. I think there's like a lot more data that you'll see, and it seems like you're already seeing some of that data. I see you smiling, so I'm a bit of a data nerd
Well,
myself. So
it, you know, we're all busy, right?
hmm.
And if I'm a brand new gardener and I'm intimidated anyway, and I go to a fabulous big box retailer, and
Hmm.
I'm a big fan, and I see 30 different soils on a shelf,
Sure.
that can be overwhelming. So,
Hmm.
how do we help them decide what's best? So, our platform is based on matching the right soil and nutrients to the plant's needs,
Sure.
because a succulent has different needs than a tropical plant, than herbs. And
Hmm.
so, we really want somebody to find success, but we take the guesswork out so that the experience becomes what they talk about and what excites them, and what they want to do again and again and again.
Sure. What are some of one thing that I mentioned earlier before we started was just the benefit of working with family offices. A lot of them are business families. So a lot of times when they invest, they put their business cap on. A lot of times they can add a lot of value as well because they just have resources. And, if you're looking for support with go-to-market strategy, they probably have a lot of resources and relationships with marketing and business development because they have a holding company of multiple businesses. What are some other observations that you've seen when kind of engaging with family offices versus just typical venture capital investors?
I think two. groups of investors that I really enjoy working with
Mm-hmm.
are certainly family offices,
Sure.
but I also institutional investors, somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's in your category,
Yeah.
who can help you navigate this a category you're new
Mm-hmm.
in.
Yeah.
Uh, Family offices, they have a wealth of knowledge and experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if you invite them into the strategy and the journey, they are so happy to help out. And
Yeah.
if that's not the kind of, if they really have the MO, we just write checks and
Mm-hmm.
we hope that 1 out of 10 hit. If that's the direction you choose to go, great. That's not where we went. We went with people who can actually help us along the way, and we've
Sure.
been very fortunate.
What's also interesting is the strategic corporates, right? So you mentioned a couple of them earlier, but I could see like Cargill, like strategically being aligned with you guys. I guess what are some other bigger corporate conglomerates that, could naturally be a great partner for you guys?
You know what? There's so many
Mm-hmm.
because we actually are refreshing a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful category,
Sure.
one that we're bringing it to the way people live and work and play today.
Mm-hmm.
So we're experiential. We're about building
Yeah.
stories. So whether it's a group that invests in healthy foods,
Mm-hmm.
because we have that nutritional channel, or whether it's something from a mental health perspective, insurance companies. I mean, we've been very, very lucky. We also have just good retail partners.
Mm-hmm.
One of our board members is the president of Retail Connection, and he will give me real feedback
Mm-hmm.
on certain trends and opportunities that are happening in the retail sector that I might not be privy to.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I think finding the right people is as important as what's on their business card.
Sure. No, it's really helpful. And then, I saw the Martha Stewart documentary like a couple months ago, and it was just pretty interesting seeing her story. But I feel like the brand that she's built is essentially a more of a media brand, and just kind of like a lifestyle brand of just kind of cultivating in the house. And I think she built a really huge following around her. She was also integrating in cooking too, and then that kind of expanded into, I think, a bedding line and multiple other products. But I think with you, you're taking more of a technology and product approach. So, what are some of the innovations that you're seeing in the future of gardening? I mean, I've seen some of the technologies with like vertical farming, and then obviously there's a whole impact spin to this too, making plants and food available in areas that are not there. So, I'm sure there's a lot of innovations in more effective gardening. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a lay of the land as investors in terms of what the trends are that you're seeing in those in just the category as a whole.
Well, I think Martha has done great things for
Mm-hmm.
the home and garden category. She's made life aspirational and achievable,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she has invited us in to the idea that details matter,
Mm-hmm.
and she builds a lifestyle over a product, and I think that's what
Yeah.
we do. We're not just about a one and done. We're an invitation to try gardening. You find success, and then
Mm-hmm.
you may go on to do bigger and better.
Sure.
We have also found, and there's global research that we can draft from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so one of the things is people who grow vegetables have more respect for the pricing that the vegetables cost in grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
That's a win for farmers. That's a win for the grocery store retailers, and it's a win for the individual consumer. So when you really think about the future of gardening, I think that it is making it accessible to everybody. So whether you're on a high rise, you have a sprawling yard, or you're in a wheelchair, we are making that experience accessible. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that being experience driven brings it from aspirational to achievable. And I love that.
Sure. That's amazing.
There's a
Um,
lot of cool things happening in the horticultural side. I mean,
yeah.
we know that tomatoes really thrive in warm weather. And when a frost comes, they don't do well. Well, there's a whole bunch of research happening right now to make a frost-resistant tomato, to genetically modify it. Does that mean we're going to be able to have, tomato sandwiches 12 months a year? I don't know. But there's a whole bunch of work going on behind the scenes that I applaud.
There's a lot of innovations too. I mean, this isn't that innovative, but there was a whole business model around, I think it was called Misfit Foods. So they took all the ugly vegetables that had like a weird shape or had a dent in them, and he sold them. And I think that company did really well.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had an exit, but just kind of pockets in the market where there's inefficiencies and there's waste. You could probably create a home for that, and obviously do good by doing good, right? Build a business that's generating healthy revenue and creating some impact, but also healthy numbers and data on the P&L. So I think that's pretty interesting. But one thing that's also quite interesting, I'm reading a book, and I think Matthew McConaughey was mentioned, and he for the longest time struggled with him being categorized as like a rom-com actor, and he kept getting these offers to become a rom-com actor. And like, I think there was one opportunity where like they offered him $4 million, then he turned it down. They offered him $8 million, and then I think it was like $14 million, where that was the tough pill to swallow, where he really wanted to create a new identity for himself as a serious actor. And then I think that's when he had his first role as the Lincoln lawyer. And like, that's when he became kind of a breakthrough actor in like the serious category. But that was pretty interesting to kind of know when to say no. And, you can't do everything, and you want to kind of be a little more selective in terms of like what your core beliefs are and what your product offering is. But I think Martha Stewart went through that same process as well. So she got to a point where I think there were some issues with her business, and then she kind of had a restart where she was supposed to go on a bunch of these cooking shows, and they were just kind of telling her what to do, and it wasn't really authentic to her true self. And then I think she kind of had a little bit of a reboot after that, where she kind of started doing stuff with Snoop Dogg, but it was like funny, and it was really her true self, right? And she kind of went back to kind of having fun and really just being Martha, versus kind of trying to do things that aren't really authentically who you are and who your identity is, because that impacts your business and your brand. So I don't know if you have any reactions to that in terms of like having to say no and having to kind of be thoughtful around just kind of the core focus of the business.
Yes. And I'm such a huge fan that Martha is authentic to herself. I think she has opened up a window for entrepreneurs of any age to have the courage to try. I mean, as we were raising money, and someday I need to write all this down. We had somebody say, "Wow, are you not just old? Shouldn't you want to be home and retired?" Yet somebody say, literally, "Wow, you have a special needs child. Shouldn't you like be taking care of that child?" I mean, like it's astounding. And I think of somebody like Martha Stewart, and I think she is true to who she is. And the products are all of a certain level of excellence. And I think that that's really important. I think she lives the products that she creates and shares, which is cool. For me, I think I love product development, but we do ask, does it fall under the garden-inspired living category? Does it help create the story? Does it help create the experience? And can we do the product that consumers want, but that meets all of our quality control? And I think collaborations are a great way to introduce new product lines. I think that there's some great brands out there that we would love to work with, that we're having some opportunities come our way now. And I think that's a good note for founders. And there's some really exciting businesses coming down the pike. And one of my jobs, I think, is to be an encourager to these new founders, but to say, is there a way we can work together? So that's been really fun.
Absolutely. What advice would you have for marketing and growth? What are some things that you've learned across, I'm assuming media buying and and user acquisition. Any advice you'd have for founders? And I'm happy to share some of my learnings too.
Well, for me, it's how many
Mhm.
times are they coming back again and again?
Yeah.
And our B2B customers, we've got an 85% retention rate where they
Mhm.
do several programs every year, year after year. So that means their employees like it and it's
Mhm.
tested well. From a consumer standpoint, we do have a loyalty program, and it's always fun to see people using their GoPro perks to get free product.
Mhm.
So that means they understand the benefits of working with and growing with Gardenuity. Um, Media buying, you just have to read the data. I mean,
Mhm.
it's not my expertise, but I think that people live their life digitally now. And so research happens online,
Mhm.
feedback happens online. And as important as the digital aspect is, I think to have a real human component is
Mhm.
important. So when somebody reaches out to our GoPro, and we do weather alerts, we track everything by zip code. I mean, we're very attuned to, we even know the pH level of the water in every zip code across the country,
Mhm.
so we can really
Yeah.
guide people to success. But we have real life people. So if
Sure.
somebody, AI certainly streamlines the process, but at the end of the day, if somebody is new to gardening and they want to ask and talk to a human being, we've got that human being accessible to talk to.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, I think as an investor, there's specifically different KPIs that are relevant if you're a B2B investor versus a consumer or e-commerce brand. I would say on the consumer side, what is the cost to acquire a customer? I think for you,
Right.
definitely like the repeat order rate is important. And then if you're doing subscriptions, there's definitely a churn rate, right? So like, I mean,
Right.
just like look at Netflix, right? I mean, people use Netflix for a couple months and then they cancel and they maybe come back, and there could be some seasonality to it as well.
Right.
So kind of personalizing it to the type of the people that buy on a certain type of seasonality also. And then with enterprise, I mean, the beauty of like software is, once you have the software, you build it once and then you sell it 1,000 times. Or you have the software, there's maybe a back office team that maintains it, but then you can go out and have an enterprise team that sells that one thing over and over again.
Right.
So that's pretty interesting as well.
I mean,
So,
I think every company needs to assume they're a tech company.
mhm.
How can technology better make the experience for the end user? How can it
Yeah.
improve that end user experience? And when you use tech to manage your inventory, then somebody's not going to order something that's not available. When you use
Mhm.
technology to speed up delivery, then they're going to be happier at the end. To track weather, they know their plants are going to arrive safely. So technology is a
Mhm.
foundation, but it's real people and real experiences that I think bring our story to life.
Sure. So if we lived on Mars, do you think we could still plant plants in like a contained environment? I guess could they ship up, in theory, the seeds to Mars and grow them there? Do you think they'd survive if they were contained in the right environment?
Well, if they were delivered by Matt Damon,
Yeah,
wasn't
exactly.
he the one on Mars who grew all the potatoes? Um,
Yeah, that was a good movie.
yeah, it was a great movie. In theory, I mean,
Hmm.
in theory, uh,
Yeah,
I haven't really thought about that question a lot.
sure.
I want people here to experience getting their hands dirty and
Hmm.
the benefits that come from it. But where we're going to be in the next, 250 years, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely.
But gardening's been
Um,
around a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it really brings the community together, which is one of the big sticking points to kind of the mental health and the well-being. Doing things and being part of a tribe definitely helps. Especially when you're dealing with the stressors of family, your health, and then also just kind of the pressures of like excelling in your professional life as well.
Well, and there's science that shows anxiety and gratitude cannot coexist at the same time, right?
Hmm.
And so
Sure.
gardening has been proven to increase your level of gratitude so that
Hmm.
automatically dissipates some of the anxiety. And I think that's important. And I think one of my mentors actually is Ariana Huffington. And I learned that through her, access without well-being is not sustainable, right?
Sure.
You need to rest and have reflection. And gardening is a way to do that, even if it's just misting a desktop garden in the morning or going out and checking on your tea garden on a patio for 3 minutes. You're engaging with nature, and nature will absolutely nurture you if you let it in.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, to close us out, first off, just really appreciate you taking time to share your story. And I think there's a lot of really helpful nuggets of wisdom from both the investor standpoint, but then also as you're building and scaling a company that's backed with investors, making sure that you're taking care of your stakeholders. What's one you have some really high profile mentors and really great people to learn from. But if you had to just give us one piece of advice, it could be from a mentor or it could just be from like a family member. What's a piece of advice that you'd want to share with us for us to take back with us?
Stewardship over speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. And persistence. Let it be your season. Every season has a reason. I mean, right now, seeds that are underground are resting before spring, but they're not engaging and getting their energy ready. Every season has a reason. So let that season kind of draw you in.
Sure.
And I'm all about the hustle. I mean, I think you have to hustle. It's hard, but it's fun. And gather around people who believe and will challenge you, are smarter than you, and will say no. I mean, my co-founder has a power of no. When I want to spend money and I beg and plead, I think I have a great idea. She has the power of no, and I have to listen.
Yeah. Like just out of curiosity, this could be anonymous, but this is just for the investors that are building their skill sets. What does an investor do that gives you the ick?
Oh, there's a lot of things. It's just a feeling. I mean, my co-founder and I went and did a pretty compelling pitch when we started, and both of us left. They wanted to write a very large check, and both of us wanted the money, but we had the ick, and it was a feeling.
Yeah.
We just
Sure.
didn't align on how to grow a business.
Sure.
And so I don't know that there's any one thing, but you got to like them. They have to like you.
It's a long road. It's a 7 to 10 year road.
That's right.
There's marriages that last. I mean, there's business deals or marriages that last longer, right? So,
You're
so it has to
exactly
be
right.
someone that you want to be with. I would say, look, I mean, I hear from the investor's perspective that like founders need to be coachable. And I want to, it'd be interesting to hear your reaction to that. But at the same time, you made a good point where sometimes, the investors are trying to tell the founder how to run the company. And, I heard this one time from an investor. Investors, which I do agree with to an extent. It depends on which stage you're investing in, but investors should almost be like grandparents, right? They're giving you a check. They're seeing that you're doing well, but they're not your parents who are essentially, like making sure you do your homework, making sure you do everything, but they want to hear updates, right? So, monthly or biweekly investor updates, that's helpful, right? Grandparents probably want to hear how you're doing, but they're not telling you how to run the company, and that's not going to be scalable for them unless they're maybe a venture studio or they're like a pre-seed investor that's like super hands-on and like that's what is their value add. But I would say, trying to try to drive the car and tell the founder how to, who they should hire for marketing partnerships and everything like that could be a little overbearing. And then I think based on what you're saying too, it could also be just maybe the terms don't align also, right? The vibe and the terms.
True.
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest assets for Gardenuity is that I didn't come from the gardening space, right?
Sure.
And so I brought a fresh perspective to a category that has really been the same for a long time. And
Yeah.
I think that has helped us,
Hmm.
interestingly enough. I think, um, looking at it through a clean lens has been helpful. And none of the investors that we have were concerned with the fact that I hadn't spent 20 years in the horticultural arena.
Sure.
They like that I understand experiential retail,
Hmm.
and how to make a consumer feel. So, working with your investors, knowing what their strengths are. I mean, there's some I turn to for introductions and some I turn
Hmm.
to say, check my math.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Donna, thank you so much for your time. Really exciting what you're building, and congrats on all the success and progress.
Joel, thank you. And I'm glad your little one brought a tree home. I hope she's enjoying
Oh
it.
yeah, no, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun kind of doing it with her, and appreciate all that you do.
Good. Have a great
All right.
day.
Take care. Bye,
Bye bye.
guys. See ya.